Earth's ecosystems before the first humans appeared. This was a world shaped by natural forces alone, a planet teeming with life forms, both strange and magnificent, many of which would never witness the dawn of humankind. Imagine stepping back in time, not just centuries, but millions of years, into an era where the continents were still drifting towards their current positions and the climate was undergoing dramatic, planet-altering shifts. This was the Cenozoic era, the age of mammals, a period that began with the cataclysmic extinction of the dinosaurs, and set the stage for the world we know today. Long before any hominin footprint marked the African soil, a vibrant and often terrifying collection of creatures roamed vast, unfamiliar landscapes. This was a planet of giants, where birds were apex predators and mammals grew to sizes that dwarf their modern relatives. It was a world of dense, humid rainforests stretching from pole to pole, and later of sweeping grasslands that fueled the evolution of entirely new kinds of animals. This was a world of constant change, of evolutionary arms races, and of ecosystems so rich and complex they challenge our modern imagination. The story of this pre-human world begins in the aftermath of devastation. Around 66 million years ago, the Cretaceous-Paleogene extinction event wiped out roughly 75% of all species on Earth, including all non-avian dinosaurs. This planetary reset button created a massive power vacuum. In the eerie quiet that followed, the survivors emerged. Among them were the mammals, which had, until then, lived in the shadows of the dinosaurs. They were mostly small, nocturnal, and insect-eating. But with their colossal reptilian oppressors gone, they found a world of opportunity. The Paleocene epoch, which followed the extinction, was the first chapter in this new mammalian dynasty. The world was warm and swampy, with subtropical forests extending far into the polar regions. In this hothouse environment, mammals began to diversify at an astonishing rate. They exploded in form and function, experimenting with new diets and new ways of life. Early hoofed animals, the ancestors of today's deer and horses, appeared, as did the first true primates, who began their evolutionary journey in the canopies of these boundless forests. But not all of the new dominant animals were furry. In the absence of large theropod dinosaurs like Tyrannosaurus rex, giant flightless birds stepped up to become the top predators on several continents. Creatures like Gasternus in Europe and North America stood over 2 meters tall, with massive, powerful beaks capable of crushing bone. For millions of years, these terror birds were the undisputed kings of their domains, a fearsome reminder that evolution doesn't always follow a predictable path. As the planet moved into the Eocene epoch, around 56 million years ago, the global hothouse reached its peak. Palm trees grew as far north as Alaska, and crocodiles swam in the Arctic. This warmth and humidity fueled incredible biodiversity, particularly in the sprawling rainforests. This was the golden age for many early mammal groups. In the seas, the first fully aquatic mammals evolved. Ambulocetus, the walking whale, had legs and could move on land, but its powerful tail and webbed feet made it a formidable predator in the water. An amazing transitional fossil showing the first steps whales took on their journey back to the sea. By the end of the Eocene, colossal creatures like a serpentine whale reaching up to 18 meters long, patrolled the oceans, hunting sharks and large fish. On land, the diversity was just as stunning. This was a world of giants. The Eunythiers, large rhinoceros-like herbivores with bizarre knobbed skulls, browsed in the North American and Asian forests. But the true titans were animals like Indracatherium, which emerged later in the Oligocene. The largest land mammal that ever lived, this hornless relative of the rhinoceros stood nearly 5 meters tall at the shoulder and weighed an estimated 20 tons. Browsing on the tops of trees like a mammalian giraffe, these megaherbivores shared their world with an array of strange carnivores, including the creodonts and mesonychids, mammal groups that have no living descendants today. Hyanodon, a widespread creodont, was a powerful predator with a bone-cracking bite, filling a niche similar to modern hyenas, but on a much larger scale. However, this superheated world was not destined to last. Starting around 34 million years ago, at the boundary between the Eocene and Oligocene epochs, the planet began a long and dramatic cooling trend. The continent of Antarctica, now isolated over the South Pole, began to accumulate massive ice sheets, locking up vast amounts of water and causing sea levels to drop. This global cooling event, known as the Grande Coupure, triggered profound changes in ecosystems worldwide. The endless, uniform rainforests began to retreat, replaced by more open woodlands and, crucially, the first extensive grasslands. This change in vegetation was a major evolutionary driver. The old forest-dwelling browsers, adapted for soft leaves, began to decline. In their place, a new type of herbivore rose to prominence. The grazer, eating tough, abrasive grasses, required new adaptations. Animals evolved longer legs for running across open plains to escape predators, and their teeth became taller, more durable, and better suited for grinding down silica-rich grasses. This is when the ancestors of modern horses, camels, and antelopes truly began to flourish. Their evolutionary fate tied directly to the spread of these new grassy plains. The predators evolved in response. The age of the creodonts began to wane, and the first members of the order Carnivora, the group that includes today's cats, dogs, bears, and seals, started to become more common and diverse. Canids, and the ancestors of cats, like nimravids or false saber-toothed cats, became adept hunters of the new plains-dwelling herbivores, sparking an evolutionary arms race between speed and stealth, endurance and power. This trend continued into the Miocene and Pliocene epochs, the final acts before the arrival of early hominins. The world continued to cool and dry, and grasslands and savannas became the dominant biomes across vast stretches of the globe. This was a world that would look somewhat more familiar to us, populated by the direct ancestors of many animals alive today. Herds of three-toed horses like hipparion, giraffe-like camels, and immense proboscideans, the relatives of elephants, such as the shovel-tusked gomphotheres, migrated across the savannas of Africa, Eurasia, and North America. The variety of these elephant relatives was staggering, with different species adapted to digging up roots, stripping bark, or grazing on grasses. The carnivore guilds were also at their peak diversity. Alongside true cats and dogs were the formidable barbafelids, and the last of the true saber-toothed cats, whose iconic fangs were perfected for taking down large, thick-skinned prey. In South America, which was isolated for most of this time, a completely unique fauna had evolved. Marsupials filled the role of top predators, including the a saber-toothed marsupial remarkably convergent with the saber-toothed cats of other continents. Giant ground sloths, some as large as elephants, and armored glyptodonts, the size of a small car, ambled through the landscape. This continental-scale evolutionary experiment came to a dramatic end when the Isthmus of Panama formed, connecting North and South America and allowing a massive exchange of animal life, an event that reshaped the ecosystems of two continents. This long, dynamic, and ever-changing world of the Cenozoic was the crucible in which our own lineage was forged. In the expanding savannas of East Africa, driven by the same climatic shifts that favored grasslands, a group of apes descended from the trees and began to walk upright. This adaptation, perhaps initially, to see over the tall grasses, or to free the hands for carrying food, was the first small step on the long road to humanity. For millions of years, these early hominins, like Australopithecus, were simply another part of the fauna, living alongside the giant herbivores and terrifying predators, more often the hunted than the hunter. They were not yet masters of the planet, but simply one of many species trying to survive in the breathtakingly wild and complex world that existed before humans walked